But let's be clear about the circumstances which led to that moment on Saturday. This tragedy occurred as a result of a deliberate and hostile resistance by Democrat leaders in Minnesota. Obstructing federal law enforcement and inciting violence against officers is wrong and illegal. Where you have elected Democrat officials across the country who are encouraging left-wing agitators and crazy people to go out and unlawfully obstruct lawful immigration enforcement. These brave men and women of ICE and Border Patrol and the federal enforcement are just trying to do their jobs to enforce our nation's immigration laws and to go after the worst of the worst in this country. There has no doubt been selective outrage by the liberal biased media and picking and choosing victims and highlighting their stories.
This individual showed up to impede a law enforcement operation and assaulted our officers. They responded according to their training. This is a violent riot when you have someone showing up with weapons and are using them to assault law enforcement officers.
Tonight, let me say once again to Donald Trump and Kristi Noem, end this occupation. You've done enough.
The needs of big corporations and special interests first are
The agents attempted to disarm the individual, but he violently resisted.
As a United States military veteran, the man, Alex, was not resisting. What I saw disgusted me. It made me feel sick to my stomach.
When someone makes the choice to come into an active law enforcement scene, interfere, obstruct, delay, or assault law enforcement officers, and they bring a weapon to do that, that is a choice that individual made.
They shot that guy!
Body camera footage to be released to the public. Now,
That's not something I've heard the president commit to, so I won't do that from the podium.
Stephen Miller labeled Preddy a domestic terrorist. Does the president agree with them?
I have not heard the president characterize Mr. Preddy in that way.
Why did administration officials jump to conclusions before an investigation had even been conducted?
This has obviously been a very fluid and fast-moving situation throughout the weekend. As for President Trump, whom I speak for, he has said that he wants to let the investigation continue and let the facts lead in this case.
Will Stephen Miller be apologising to the family of Alex Pretty for calling him, quotes, an assassin who tried to murder federal agents, despite the fact that, as you say, this is still under investigation?
Again, this incident remains under investigation, and nobody here at the White House, including the President of the United States, wants to see Americans hurt or killed and losing their lives in American streets.
Is he concerned that some of those definitive statements made by other officials risks public perception of the credibility of those investigations now?
Again, the President believes that these investigations are credible, they are continuing, they are active, and he wants to let them play out.
FBI Director Kash Patel said in a Sunday interview, quote, "You cannot bring a firearm loaded with multiple magazines to any sort of protest." Does the president believe the Second Amendment rights remain in effect even when protesting?
Americans have a constitutional right to bear arms. Americans do not have a constitutional right to impede lawful immigration enforcement operations. When you are bearing arms and you are confronted by law enforcement, you are raising the assumption of risk and the risk of force being used against you. And again, that's unfortunately what took place on Saturday.
Caroline, is it the White House's position that Americans have the right to show up to these ICE operations and film, document, or protest the law enforcement actions?
All Americans have a First Amendment constitutional right, of course. But Americans do not have a constitutional right to impede and obstruct lawful immigration enforcement operations. That is actually a crime. Look right here in Washington, D.C. We have been able to remove thousands of illegal aliens from the District of Columbia, where you all live, so you can thank President Trump for that. There were no riots, there were no protests. That's all the president is asking for in Minnesota. It's totally common sense.
Should the deployment of Mr. Homan to Minneapolis be seen as a sign that the president is dissatisfied with how the officials on the ground had handled the incident?
No, Mr. Homan is doing an exceptional job, and he has been working with Secretary Noem and President Trump over the course of the last year.
Does the president remain fully confident in Kristi Noem's ability to lead the DHS?
The answer is yes. He still has confidence and trust in Secretary Noem.
Does the president believe that the killing, though, was a mistake? Has he expressed that at all?
Again, the president has said, we have to review it, and this investigation needs to continue, and he's letting the facts on the investigation lead itself.